The member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The simple definition of DNA is that a molecule that contains a genetic code is unique to every individual. The code, if you like, is an instruction manual for making all proteins that form our bodies and help us thrive. And these codes or instruction manuals are, of course, genetic, handed from parent to child. It's true that fruit never falls far from the tree, and we all inherit bits and pieces and odds and sods from our parents and grandparents. Often there's a physical, but many are not. And miraculously, Deputy Speaker, no two codes or DNA are the same. I've always loved science, and now I'm not sure that this was an inherited aspect of my DNA or something I developed at school, and perhaps it was just a bit of both. But surely the discovery and the study of DNA is one of the greatest scientific advances of all time. Now, science, much like history, is debated. So the question of who discovered DNA is a vexed one. Was it a Swiss chemist or others? And there are many who claim that they discovered it. For me, I'll settle for the Eagle Pub theory. It suits Australian larrikinism, I think. For it was in this pub that Crick and Watson, on the 28th of February 1953, celebrated the discovery of the structure of DNA. DNA, the building block of life. In such way, and it is the same way that budgets are for governments. No two are the same. Their codes or building blocks are often inherited, in the cases of budget through ideologically or history, and they are all unique, tailored to cut and suit the demands, challenges and pressures of the time. The budget handed down recently is very much in the tradition of Labor, and it is unmistakably Labor. And so today in this place I would like to outline the evidence for this. How is this a Labor budget, and how is it tailored for our times? But I also want to touch on my particular electorate's DNA and how the budget will assist my constituents specifically. I also want to touch on some non-economic pressures and the pain that my community is feeling. This budget, Deputy Speaker, leaves no Australian behind, not one. That is, every Australian taxpayer receives a tax cut. In Werriwa, this means that 80,000 taxpayers will, on average, get a tax cut of over $1,400. That's real money in real pockets from the 1st of July 2024, and it represents a significant increase on the tax cuts proposed by the previous government. In addition, we also have increases to the Medicare levy low-income threshold, ensuring that more than 1 million low-income taxpayers continue to be exempt from the Medicare levy or pay a reduced rate. Difficult economic times require a government to respond responsibly and appropriately. The new power bill rebates do both. Again, no one, I repeat, no one is left behind by the Albanese Government, including small business, in these power rebates. Every household in Werriwa will receive a $300 rebate applied quarterly, and small businesses will receive $325. Real money and real assistance and real help with the cost of living. In honesty, there's not enough time for me to detail all the cost of living measures in this budget. The billions for infrastructure in my part of south-western Sydney will be a speech in themselves. So in this address, I restrict myself to just 4 measures that are particularly relevant to my constituents. Firstly, there's more assistance to help the nearly 1 million Australian households with the cost of rent by increasing the maximum rates of Commonwealth rent assistance by 10%. This benefits over 9,000 households in Werriwa and builds on the government 15% increase which commenced in September 2023. Secondly, Deputy Speaker, this budget strengthens our healthcare system yet again. Members will remember the government's previous initiative in this area last year, namely the establishment of urgent care clinics, cheaper medicines through the 60-day scripts, and a historic $3.5 billion investment to triple the bulk billing incentive. This budget goes further by freezing the PBS co-payment and adding more medicines to the PBS. Residents in Werriwa have already saved over $1.5 million thanks to our earlier reforms, and now everyone in Werriwa who has access to PBS medicines are set to save more. Further, we're expanding Medicare coverage to an MRI machine in Werriwa, expanding affordable access to imaging services. The third aspect of the budget I'd like to highlight relates to HECS relief for students. Many in my electorate are the first in their family to attend university, while others pursue alternate post-school educational opportunities. They know that solid education is the foundation for their future career and economic well-being. Labor has always been the friend of universities, beginning with Gough Whitlam's reforms all those years ago to the Dawkins reforms a few years later. This budget helps the HECS and help system make the HECS help system fairer. It does this by cutting $3 billion in student debt for more than 3 million Australians. Our government is doing this by capping help indexation rate to the lower of either the CPI or the wage price index. This means help debts will never grow faster than wages. For Werriwa, this change will support over 26,000 people. Fourthly and finally, Deputy Speaker, there was one item in the recent budget that wasn't picked up by many. It's the additional $67.5 million as part of the government's second tranche of reforms to crack down on scammers. Surely all Australians have either been the victim of a scam or know someone who has been scammed. In all their iteration, SMS emails, phone calls, door knockers and the like, scams are everywhere. We all know this, but it only really gets driven home when we experience it personally. Recently, I was scammed. The exact mechanism by which I was scammed is still a bit of a mystery, which in itself is a worry. Thankfully, I was alerted in good time and to the best of my ability have taken every appropriate subsequent action. And I'm not out of pocket, which unfortunately cannot be the same for some of the constituents of Werriwa. A few months ago, I was very grateful for a visit to my office by the Assistant Treasurer. He led a well-attended and very informative scams forum. In 2023, Australians made more than 600,000 scam reports, and they lost up to $2.7 billion to scams. These are terrible statistics. And the Albanese Government takes scams seriously, and the announcement of additional funds in the budget will help my constituents keep ahead of the scammers. Deputy Speaker, the economic and cost of living pressures for Australians that Australians facing are real. Equally real are the relief measures in this budget. The measures in the budget are founded in our ideology and DNA to help those who need it, to offer a helping hand and to reward effort. As much as the economy and budgets are important, so are communities. I started today talking about DNA. I referred to the physical traits we inherit from our forebears, but I also referred to other characteristics, non-physical. For as much as we are all unique and individual, we share far more in common. The bond of humanity far exceeds our differences. We all feel pain, we all feel joy, we all experience disappointment, and we hope for a better future. I rise today to talk about how my community has been hurting. And it's only right that I speak not only about the economic pain, but the talk of the shared heartbreak of many in my community are experiencing and are continuing to experience. Over 40,000 people have been killed in Gaza, Deputy Speaker. I don't say that lightly. Aid workers, journalists and innocent civilians have been killed, and the world is much poorer for their loss. There's been a massive swathe of destruction which has crippled existing infrastructure. The horror that we have seen is unfathomable and condemnable. The blocking of humanitarian assistance is unacceptable. To forget the suffering we have borne witness to would be deplorable. We must never forget, not now, not how this most recent conflict began, and not the countless tragedies that have led to this moment. I mourn each of them. I mourn the good, the decent, who struggled for a peaceful future that they sadly have not now lived to see. I fear this cycle will not end until we resolve the perpetually unresolved issue, the recognition of the Palestinian state. The Albanese Government supports a two-state solution as the best possible path to ensure peace and prosperity. Australia has voted to increase the participation of Palestine in the United Nations, and we have voted for the cessation of hostilities. We've called for a ceasefire. We've called for humanitarian assistance. I've spoken and corresponded with many in my community. I share their sadness, their anguish and their frustration. I recognise their pain and will always endeavour to act on their behalf with their best interests in mind. For as much as budgets and the economy and cost of living count, and they do, so do communities and so do people. I will do everything in my remit and power to listen, encourage and foster tolerance, both at a one-on-one level with individuals, but also on the broader policy front. I will continue to engage with all those with faith and those with none. I will continue to recognise those in my community who give selflessly of themselves for the benefit of others. I will continue to work towards harmony, mutual respect and tolerance. And more than anything, I will continue to listen. Listening, Deputy Speaker, genuine listening is hard, but if we all try, then it will make a difference. Everyone has a story and everyone needs to be heard. I generally feel this budget is a response to listening to the concerns of everyday Australians, and it is a real step and the right direction in addressing the economic hurt so many are feeling. It has much more to offer all Australians, and in its DNA is authentically Labor. It is a budget I'm proud to defend. In the same way, I am proud of my community, my home electorate and its constituent. They've been through tough times, and I hope this budget will be a solid step for them in addressing their economic concerns. But more than that, I also hope that as a community in its full diversity, we can begin to address those other deeper longing pains that are shared by so many. These pains that desire for a better tomorrow, a more peaceful future and an end to war and division. The responsibility for addressing these pains lies with all of us, and I commend the budget to the House.